Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, our 88th episode. We have been gone for a little while because we've been super duper busy. Niles, how have you been since our last episode when we talked about the Monkey movie?
Oh, yeah, the Monkey movie. I forgot about that. It's been so long. Yeah, I've been good. Running around like a chicken with my head cut off between like back-to-back wedding weekends for family and then friends, and then, just trying to get resettled. It feels like it's just been nonstop these past few weeks, but
For sure.
still trying to find time to hang out and watch some good movies. But how have you been, Dylan?
Oh, yeah, I've been pretty good as well. Went out to California for a little bit, or as some people like to call it, California.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, not to get political. No, but it's, went to Yosemite, did some glamping. It was a great time. Saw one of our mutual friends who actually made the artwork from our Star Wars Rewind video that we did recently, so that was fun. But yeah, got to spend some time with family, be off grid a little bit, and was off work for long enough that coming back to work was very stressful. So,
Yep, I know that feeling.
yep. But yeah, and got to watch a lot of good movies over the last few weeks too, and big TV season coming up. But we are going to talk about one of those movies now, and that movie would be Furiosa. So we're going to start with some non-spoilers, as always, and we'll transition into spoilers, time codes for all that in the description. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, go watch it first and then come back for that. But starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth, and once again, written and directed by George Miller, Furiosa is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road and follows the titular character on an epic saga of revenge against the warlord Dementis that takes her from a young girl to the experienced warrior that we know she becomes in Fury Road. Furiosa is the fifth film in the Mad Max series and the first to not directly follow the adventures of Max himself, instead following Furiosa. So, Niles, what are your initial thoughts on Furiosa?
Man, I really enjoyed this. It is a fun narrative about revenge, and it's really cool as like just a film concept in general. It just kind of follows that classic Buildings Roman. It's the coming of age tale. It's like someone just it's just their origin story in a way. And I'm glad that we got this. And I'll also say that before we get too far in as well, I'm not as well versed in my Mad Max lore. I think I've saw the first one years and years ago, probably when I was a teenager, and I remember thinking.
And you mean Fury Road?
Yes, or no, I mean Mad Max, the first one.
Oh, the actual first one. Okay.
The actual first one. I've seen that one years and years ago. I was probably a teenager at the time, and I remember thinking, this is so boring. But that's just, I think, just my teenager brain. I think if I saw it today, I would have a different opinion on it. And it's just it's very slow compared to Fury Road, which I've seen more recently. And Fury Road is just such a phenomenal movie. And it's just, that's my background on Mad Max. I know you're a little bit more well-versed than I am, Dylan.
Well, recently, yeah. So until like a month ago, I'd only seen Fury Road and played some of the Avalanche Studios video game, which I will talk about later on the show, but I've gone back to and am playing a little bit of it now. But leading up to this, I went back and I watched the entire Mel Gibson trilogy and rewatched Fury Road, and I am glad that I did. I will say, I enjoy all of these movies to varying degrees, but
Sure.
I do feel like Fury Road and now Furiosa are like George Miller has fine-tuned what he wants this to be. And it took him a while of experimentation to figure out what it was. And also worth noting, the original Mad Max was made for like the cost of a sandwich. So it's a different era. But
Absolutely.
I did find like watching them for the first time very interesting because the like what we know as the wasteland doesn't visually resemble that wasteland until Beyond Thunderdome. The first two movies, it's just Australia. Like,
Yeah.
it's just the outback.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah, that's like I think the thing that kind of bored me about the first one was I was like, isn't this movie about an apocalypse and it's just Mel Gibson running around like pre-apocalypse? Like,
Yeah, he's like a cop, and he has a
yeah,
family, and he lives in a little, like, kind of nice house. But I think what I find interesting is like they don't really neatly fit together, right? It's not that type of series, and they kind of do, but not really. And the format of really all except the first one is like Max sort of floats into these people's lives, affects them, helps them in some way, and then drifts back out into the wasteland. And the reason he's like that is the events of the first movie. But and we'll talk about this a lot in this discussion. But these are, I've seen a lot of people saying this, and now having seen all of them, I agree. These are campfire stories. They're not meant to have a tight continuity or anything. They are legends of the wasteland, and in Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome, like even within the text themselves, these are stories being recounted by people that Max interacts with in the main plot of the movie.
yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's a very good observation because I have heard that the continuity it doesn't really make sense, and at a certain point it's like wow, like even in the Fury Road it's like that's supposed to be Max. He looks so young, It's like shouldn't he be like an older man by this time? But anyway, but I think that's the fact that they're kind of these legends. It does reflect what the wasteland is, what post-apocalypse is. At a certain point, history drifts away, and then all you have left are stories. It's this lore. Like it doesn't matter if you know who the king of England was for a time. It doesn't matter anymore. It's like, no, this is the wasteland, and you're fucked. It's a completely different world. But I really liked this movie, and I think it feels incredibly well aligned with Fury Road. I want to go back and rewatch Fury Road at some point soon because it just looks so visually similar, and I think they just gel really well together. And we'll get more into it here in spoilers, but I think that Fury Road, it added more layers to some of those characters, or Furiosa, excuse me. Furiosa added more layers to these characters that we've seen in Fury Road. It just kind of built the world out a little bit more, added complexity, and I do want to go back and just see how that changes my viewing experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to circle back to what you said about Max being so young in Fury Road, right?
Oh, sure.
Because like it does seem like a lot of the other characters in that movie who remember the before times are much older, and Max is not, and that does fit into that mythic element of the character. And apparently, it's the reason that Mel Gibson didn't return. You might have thought, well, he's a huge racist, so that's why he didn't return. Apparently, that's not the reason, unfortunately. But from what I understand, both Miller and Mel Gibson agreed that they just like couldn't picture Max as an old man. And so they had to recast in order to continue the franchise. And this is actually very interesting, just about the lore of the franchise in general. I watched a Vanity Fair video with George Miller where he talks about the influences on the different eras of Mad Max. Cool. And he said the original, because, everybody in Mad Max is obsessed with gasoline, as they call it. It's like the main thing everybody's after. And the reason for that is the inspiration came from the oil crisis in the 70s. George Miller, he's Australian, and he said, like, when that happened in Australia, it took 10 days for the first shot to be fired. And he says,
wow.
And he also adds, though, not at anybody. We don't have a gun culture in Australia, but 10 days for the first shot, like in the air. And he's like, well, what would happen if it was 100 days? What about 1,000 days? What does the world become based on that? And so that is where this franchise drew its inspiration. And that's why the apocalypse is this sort of slow-moving apocalypse. And it doesn't really get nuclear until sometime between the Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome.
That is neat because, we do think about the apocalypse being this very sudden event. And if I remember right from my undergrad, apocalypse kind of just means like this unveiling. You're just kind of taking away the curtain and you're seeing what's there in a way. It's obviously it means a lot more than that, but it's not something that's going to happen or it may not happen instantaneously. Like, sure, there might be a nuclear war, but there's events that lead up to things. There's consequences, and I think, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that about the origins there.
Well, and a slow-moving apocalypse, I think, is more realistic, and it's what we are going to experience within our lifetime with things like climate change causing migration crises, causing all of this stuff that builds and builds and builds and builds.
Yes.
We can still turn the ship around, guys. We can do it if we try, but not the point. But I saw someone online describe Furiosa as heavy metal cinema, and I think that is a perfect way to describe this film, and I think it functions as an excellent companion piece to Fury Road. It is interesting to me because the films are extremely different from each other, right? Like the easiest difference to spot would be both scope and pace. Fury Road is a very fast-paced and tight car chase that takes place over a couple days, right? And Furiosa is less evenly paced, but it's an epic that takes place over a decade and a half. It's biblical. Like, it feels like this mythic saga.
Yeah.
And
right.
And also the filmmaking of them is very different. Fury Road has a lot of really quick cuts, much shorter shot length than Furiosa has. And if you look into the making of Fury Road, they talk about how it was very important for them to have the subject of each shot always be in the middle of the frame, because the movie is cutting so quickly. You needed that, and that's why quick cuts have such a bad rap in movies, is because the audience gets lost. Like they're looking down in this corner in one shot, and then you cut over here, and the subject's up here, and then it jumps around. But George Miller and his team are good at this, so they understood that if we're going to do these shorter shots, we have to make sure the audience isn't getting lost between all the cuts, and that is why Fury Road is so good, despite the shorter shot length. And but yeah, and also despite the narrative and stylistic differences, though, there is no doubt that these two films work together and are speaking to each other and operating as one larger franchise. And I think that's something a lot of other big franchises, like a Star Wars or a Marvel, that have developed this sort of house style can learn from. It's like you can have these different visual flares or stylistic tones in your different stories, and they can still work together as one larger whole. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I think at this point, too, this is, like you said at the top, this is the first one in the series that isn't about Max. It's about one of the other characters. And I think at this point, I'm totally fine with, if they wanted to do another one, go for it. You don't have to do another Mad Max. Just do another cool character for that universe, or just focus on a conflict, like maybe the 40-Day War, or, maybe even something else that's post Furiosa, post Fury Road, like that. You don't need Max anymore, because this is such a diverse landscape, and you can have him kind of cameo, I think. But I think that this world it's very rich in its character diversity, and I really, really like how all the characters just seem to have these silly names, like Rictus Erectus and Scrotus and shit like that.
And Piss Boy.
Yeah, all these stupid names. It's wouldn't that be great if the next movie, the title was just Scrotus and a Mad Max story?
Yeah. You've got Scrotus, Rictus Rectus, Piss Boy. You have all these characters.
Ooh, franchise. Yeah. I'm seeing so much potential.
Yeah, but everybody does have really weird names. The villain of the Road Warrior is named Lord Humongous.
Love it.
But yeah, it's such a great franchise. And I remember when Fury Road came out, there were the usual suspects of idiot on the internet, right? Who are like, oh wow, the series went. They weren't saying woke yet. They were saying something else. I forget what their term of choice was back then, but it's Fury Road, it's not even about Max, it's about this woman, Furiosa. And it's
oh no.
Yeah, well, it's one, cringe, loser attitude for sure, but also it just betrayed the fact that they had never seen any Mad Max movies before, because they're all like this. They're all about other people, and then Max turns up and it's just fuck you guys, and then never mind, I'll help out, cool. and then he leaves. Like, that's all of them. That is what happens. And if you were upset by that, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about performances a little bit too, because both Anya Taylor-Joy and Alila Brown. Wow, I'm stupid. They both bring really great energy to the character of Furiosa. Alila Brown plays the younger version of the character, and then Anya Taylor-Joy takes over at that point. And then also, this is probably Chris Hemsworth's strongest performance, at least that I've seen. Like,
he's pretty good. Yeah,
he's pretty great.
He's really good. I really liked him in was it Bad Times at the Royale? I think
Bad Times at the El Royale. Yeah, he's also pretty horrifying in that movie.
Yeah, he's a fantastic villain when he plays a villain. He's very good at that. So I agree. It's a really good performance, much better than Thor 4. But that wasn't really his fault.
No, that's more on Taika. That's the director's fault.
But I agree. Yeah, I think Anya Taylor-Joy and Alila Brown, they did really phenomenal work here. And I just think, in my opinion, Brown, she kind of did more of the heavy lifting. Maybe just for me, because at the start, I feel like she just had so much. She just did a really good job of just carrying that character and emoting and just communicating what we need to know about her really effectively. And, Anya, she did great too. And I think it's just because that was the start of the movie. So that's the time to really get invested in a character. So I think she did a lot of heavy lifting there. But honestly, I'm just splitting hairs because they both did such a great job.
Yeah, well, it's very, like... Alia had a really important job in this movie because the emotional inciting incidents of the film are happening when she is still playing the character.
Yes.
So for this movie to work, it was crucial that she nails those early scenes that we'll talk about in spoilers a little bit, and she did.
Yes.
And I also I didn't have a note on it, but it's nice to watch a movie where everyone can just accept that a character can be played by multiple actors within the same film again. We don't, I think I talk about this in non-spoilers, but, we don't get this type of narrative all that often anymore, It's it is an epic saga that takes place over many, many years, and I understand why, those are hard to do, and that's part of why they're so rare, I'm sure. And I also understand the critiques around the length and some pacing problems, but I honestly didn't feel them. I was pretty locked in, and I was just kind of on board for everything that I was witnessing.
Yeah, me too. I loved all of it. It was a little long, but honestly, I don't know what you would trim. I don't know how you would shorten it down. It was. I think every bit of it was very important for telling the story well, and I think that the film, it does a phenomenal job at just world building and helping to just helping me get a better sense of who the players are in this wasteland. What does it look like? How the strongholds are interconnected, and rounded out some of those Fury Road villains like we talked about already. But yeah, it's been years since I've seen Fury Road, so I honestly can't recall all the locations that they drove to and stuff. But from my recollection, it was just the Citadel. They drove out to somewhere looking for the green place, and then they came back, and that was kind of it. I don't remember them going anywhere else.
Yeah, well, they didn't in Fury Road, but the Furiosa was leaving the Citadel under the guise of going to Gastown. That was her objective, that she goes off road. But yeah, on that note, actually, about all the other characters, I'm more in spoilers, obviously, but the way the main villains of Fury Road were used in this film, I found really interesting, and it adds a lot of depth to both them and this whole world in general. And just one stray observation about the franchise as a whole that I've made over just rewatching and watching all of them in a short span of time. They all maintain this sort of the campfire story thing where they don't totally fit cleanly together, but that's more so true in the original trilogy, I think. It feels like Miller is more interested in these recent films with sort of building out the world a bit more and making a more concrete continuity between these two. Like Fury Road and Furiosa fit very neatly together, at least compared to the original trilogy. And I love the way he balances that element of oral myth with an increased continuity and all of these characters carrying over from film to film. But you have any final spoiler-free thoughts before we jump into spoilers?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the only thing is just, it's a shame that, you see these headlines of, the film not doing well at the box office, it is a shame because this is such a great movie. At the same time, I'm like, well, them's the breaks. I don't know. Like, it sucks. But I think that speaks to a larger, issue, but I don't care that much, but because I think it's still gonna be like this is gonna be a cult classic. People are gonna love this movie for years, just like they love Fury Road.
Right. The only thing I'll say on that is I agree it's a huge bummer. But apparently Fury Road was not a huge financial hit either.
Oh.
But it made money. It got enough to get this greenlit after a lot of trials and tribulations apparently behind the scenes. But the thing that has me sad about it, Fury Road wasn't a huge hit. This is an epic, long, R-rated movie as well.
Yes.
But apparently this movie's poor performance has basically set in stone that we are not getting Mad Max: The Wasteland, which was Miller's next planned Mad Max film that was going to complete this trilogy. So that's a bummer. And I hope, and also as of today, I think Furiosa was just pulled out of 800 movie theaters across America.
Bummer.
Yeah, well, it's so a couple things about the industry, but I guess before we transition into spoilers, but it's it seems in the pandemic and post-pandemic years, studios mistakenly or intentionally trained audiences that if you don't go see a movie in theaters, it'll be on, digital download in a couple weeks. It'll be on streaming in a couple weeks. We can look at The Fall Guy for an example of this. I think it's already on video on demand. And The Fall Guy is has kind of done okay, week over week. And the MCU is a big culprit of this, but I think made the studios expect that a movie is going to make $300 quadrillion in the opening weekend, and if it doesn't, well, it's a failure, gotta pull it. And back in the day, you could let a movie run for months. The Greatest Showman made a ton of money in theaters by just being there for a long time, and people kept going to see it. And Titanic was in theaters for almost a full year. And I have a feeling that a movie like this, you just keep it out, people will go see it. You and I saw it together. It was my second viewing, and we had a pretty decently full theater, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that was, a week and a half after release, I think?
Something
maybe
like
longer?
that. But
Yeah, so
I mean, everyone I kind of talked to about movies, I'm just this was a great movie. You should definitely go see it. It's fun. And, I would definitely recommend Furiosa.
Yeah. All in all, I was pretty blown away by it, and I'm glad that we got to witness something like this on the big screen. Apparently not everybody's getting to, but we did, and it's pretty special, I would say, and you should go see it if you can. This is pure excellent cinema, and you should be supporting, if you have the financial ability to do so, of course, but you should be supporting films like this if you can. Go see it in theaters, have a good time.
It's
with
original,
that,
it's fun.
Yeah. And with that, let's transition over into spoilers, because we've been talking for half an hour.
Yeah, and we're going to take this chapter by chapter from the story, so hopefully you remember what those chapters were, but we'll recap them a little bit, starting off with the poll of inaccessibility, which is a fantastic chapter name. I love that.
Also, can we just talk about how fun it is when movies have chapters?
It's cool. It's fun.
Yeah. But
it makes me feel like I'm reading a book, but
I know
seeing it,
it's a movie book. But this chapter honestly was a bit of a surprise because it focuses almost as much on Furiosa's mother, Mary Jabasa, played by Charlie Fraser, as it does on Furiosa. And like from the trailers, we knew her mother was going to be a character, but like we got a lot more of her than I was expecting. And what a fucking badass that scene.
She's cool.
That motorcycle chase where she's like sniping those guys and trying to save Furiosa, and she like steals, or she takes the wheel off of her bike and puts it on the more powerful motorcycle, and you just hear the sound of, remember when they like stop and they're like, that's the Thunder bike, and it's like, I thought you disabled it. It's like, I did.
Yeah. It's so cool. Yeah, she's that was such a neat sequence, because it's like, oh, you're tracking them across the sand, and it's like, it's this race against time, because if they get back, she knows they're going to come back to the green place and just destroy her people and take everything that they hold dear. And it's like, okay, it's not just that, it's also, that's my daughter.
Yeah.
Which wasn't entirely clear from the get-go, but I thought that was really, it was powerful, and it was fast, and it did feel kind of like a Fury Road kind of kickoff of, here we go, hitting the pavement running in a way.
Yeah. And I also loved that, like, I saw it pointed out online, and it's so true. It's like, she succeeds. Everyone who saw the green place is killed. And like, she succeeds in her mission at the very end, or Furiosa succeeds because she kills the last guy, doesn't she?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, yes, she does. Yes.
In Dementis' tent, yeah. But I appreciated this chapter narratively for a couple of reasons. One, it really takes its time letting us get to know and like Mary, which lays the groundwork for like emotionally aligning us with Furiosa's desire for revenge, right? And you see her mother getting like gutted and dying in the reflection of her eye, which was a great shot. And it also introduces us to the Green Place, which elevates Furiosa's drive to return there in Fury Road and her despair at it being gone by the time that movie takes place.
Yeah.
Which, like, I feel like when you do go back and rewatch Fury Road, you're just going to feel that pain so much more, because there's that wonderful shot where she like falls to her knees and the sand is like blowing past her. It's such a beautiful shot.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, and now you really feel like, oh, this is what she's lost. She didn't get to grow up and experience this wonderful place while it lasted because she was stolen. She was stolen away from it all. But
yeah, it's going to be heartbreaking when I go back and rewatch that. One thing that, is kind of just popped into my head was when we first meet Dementis here in the camp too, he's like dressed in all white. It's this old parachute, you know, and then as the movie goes on, it starts to change color, and I'm trying to grasp at what exactly that means, but I think it's kind of more of just this descent into madness, maybe. You know, it's like literally starts off white, and by the end of the movie it's like just in tatters, and it's just like black, and it probably smells horrible. It's like it obviously represents a big change, but I think it's probably representative of like Dementis's fall as a character. Like, he starts off as this seems competent, this intimidating warlord, but then I think as the movie goes on, especially in that final chapter, which we'll get to, he's obviously not that anymore. He changes drastically. And, but that just kind of popped into my head there. One other thing that really stuck out to me during the poll of inaccessibility was also this moment of vulnerability and empathy with Furiosa's mother, because she gets to the camp during that sandstorm. She's saving her kid. She kills like all the guards. Yeah. She's almost in the clear. And then she has this one moment where she's like about to kill the woman who's sitting there kind of protecting Furiosa, and she decides not to. Out of mercy. She's like, I kind of empathize. She's a mother. I'm a mother. So I'm just going to say, all right, let's just go. And she can live to fight another day. And then that woman literally rats her out a minute later. She runs over
immediately.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, she just betrayed you. But it's like this one single moment of vulnerability and empathy led to her mother's own demise, but then also just the rest of this saga too. And I think that was beautiful that they put that in there, because I think it's representative of the weakness that vulnerability is in this landscape. you can't show vulnerability. You can't be weak in the wasteland. You always need to be strong. And that carries through with Furiosa too. Like even as a kid, she knew I need to be quiet and just stand there and just go with the flow and not say anything.
Yeah, but shit. Okay, you saying that just sparked in my mind though, like that one act of like empathy and kindness does create a lot of tragedy in the short term, right? And all of Furiosa's suffering in this movie, but it's only because of all this that she's at the Citadel and is able to rescue all of the wives, and with the help of Max, change the nature of the wasteland and eventually take the Citadel for herself. So it's like this like misplaced act of empathy ends up creating a much better and kinder world decades later.
Good observation.
So it's like that's why it's so cool that this movie fits into Fury Road so well, because they are one story. Like this works as a standalone tale of revenge, right? But when you pair it with Fury Road, it is this complete, incredible saga of this character. And it ends and it ends in a victory. But before we get there, obviously, like we have Chapter 2, the lessons for the wasteland, and this is is this where it transitions from to Anya Taylor-Joy?
It's like
2 or 3.
It's like towards the end of this chapter, when she kind of loses the hair and the wig goes away. Like that's when it transitions. But the transition from Leela Brown to Anya Taylor-Joy is pretty fucking seamless, honestly. Like
it's hard to tell when it happens specifically.
Exactly, and that's the way it should be. And I think that's why some of those like past movies where you have 2 different characters or 2 different actors playing the same character, you're just like, this sucks. I could totally tell who it is, and you got to blend it. You got to make it a clear transition. It's not like you go from this little girl to Charlize Theron overnight.
Right.
It's like you got to find a way to get there. And I thought it wasn't jarring. It was not jarring. And I really liked the second chapter because it started to show how she's developing these skills. She's developing this knowledge. She's on the road with Dementis. And there was that kind of quote from, it obviously doesn't happen until the end of this chapter when she starts to pretend to be a boy to fit in, but it made me think of Arya Stark in Game of Thrones.
Okay,
where it's just like, why do you pretend to be a boy? Like Tywin's asking her, and she's like, safer to travel, my lord. And it's like, smart. Yeah. Why would you ever be a woman in this landscape? You got to pretend to be a man, or else you're just going to be used for procreation. Like that's just it, and that's just the state of the wasteland, which sucks. But she's obviously so smart here.
Yeah, she really is. And just a side note, I love Chris Hemsworth's line where he's like, "History man, read me a word burger." It's such a great little line. And then I love the concept of the history men in general too. And like there's some like Chris Hemsworth, Dementis is a terrifying villain, but he's also like a weird, funny guy. And he says things in really interesting and fun ways, like when he's having those people like draw and quarter their leader with motorcycles. He's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines."
Yeah,
he's so fun.
I honestly, I wonder what his character was before the apocalypse, because like he seems like he's got this showmanship to him, and he understands entertainment, but he's also like this hardened character who like he knows when to take things seriously, but at the same time he doesn't. He just doesn't.
Well, I love because he's like so out of his fucking depth. Remember, he's obviously very charismatic and he inspires the loyalty of this massive horde. And then he hears about the Citadel. He's like, "All right, let's go there." And he goes there and gets fucking owned.
Yeah.
Because he's like, "I'm going to besiege a mesa with motorcycle."
Yeah. It's like, dude, no, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, he tries to he almost seems like populist at first. He's like, revolt against the leaders, like join me and you'll share equally. Like he's trying to be like a man of the people type of guy.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't work because Immortan Joe's entourage, for whatever reason, has inspired such like loyalty within this like structure they've built. But,
Yeah, no, it's so true though.
mhm.
Yeah, I did like the. Yeah, that was an unsuccessful strategy on his part. He should, but the Trojan horse strategy to
Yes.
take over Gastown,
Mm-hmm.
that was honestly so brilliant, and also sadistic in a way
Yes.
too. You
Mm-hmm.
know, because he's like, we got to make it real, so he starts killing his own men, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, what are you doing? But I thought that was so great. I can't remember if they mentioned that he got that from the History Man character or not, but
Mm-hmm.
honestly, the History Man is that guy's just a wealth of knowledge. Like I feel like he's so valuable,
Yeah.
and he does say that he's like, make yourself valuable, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll stick around. But like when in this world where no one knows history, you know, you don't remember these great tactics of history, like even just knowing a little bit of Sun Tzu, you know, the art of war, like that stuff, like would be game changing in this world. And it's
Yes.
just so cool that the History Man's included here. Especially, but I think that his character, it's neat that they included him, especially because of the kind of inconsistencies between these movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it does sound like you're saying they're campfire stories, but the History Man's kind of this one guy who knows the history of the world, who understands the all the wars, how things
Mm-hmm.
happened, and yeah, I thought he was a cool character. I kind of wish
Yeah.
they used him a little more.
Yeah. Oh, I loved him. I loved like he's there in so many different scenes. Like even in chapter 5, he's just like with Scrotus and Rictus in even though he's
Yeah.
Dementus' guy. I guess he's been captured, but he's there and he's like able to deliver some like pretty hardcore lines, which we'll talk about later on.
Oh,
but
yeah.
this is also the section where we get a lot of play from Immortan Joe and his entourage, who are the antagonists of Fury Road. And those characters include the Bullet Farmer, obviously, the People Eater, which is the guy with the little nose thing and the horrible foot. That actor
right.
also is a former Prime Minister of Australia, I have been told. And
Yes, metal.
yes, but I love how we get to see these guys now in contrast to Dementis, as it paints them as infinitely more competent and almost level-headed by comparison.
Yeah.
Like, they are ruthless and cruel and just awful. But they do seem to run a pretty tight ship, and they're, like, making decisions based on resource allocation, and they're kind of pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, apparently there's a prequel comic to Fury Road. I haven't read it yet, but it hints that Immortan Joe was like a military guy pre-apocalypse, and it does seem like that kind of transitions into him being able to maintain this position of authority. But it's like it really adds a lot of dimension to these guys, and obviously they're like, oh, how convenient, you're managing resources and being responsible, but you're still at the top and you get whatever you need. But it's like, yeah, compared to Dementis, who, as soon as he gets in charge of something, it starts deteriorating and falling apart very quickly. Like,
Yeah.
it's like there's a reason this society has succeeded. And I had another note, too, that I put in the wrong section, because you're right. It is the her being disguised is in part 2, right? When they build the really fancy war rig, which is really awesome.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is where we first meet Praetorian Jack, which we'll talk about in part 3. But I love that she, in this section, when she's hiding and like pretending to be a boy in the Citadel after she escapes the wife apartment, she's following the History Man's advice, right? He tells her when they're in the cage that, like, make yourself useful and Dementis will protect you. He'll look after you. And she does that, just not for Dementis. She does it for Immortan Joe, and she becomes indispensable first as, like, whatever her job is, and then building the war rig, and then ultimately as a Praetorian on the, doing road war. So,
Yeah, no, that's so true.
but
It's a bleak fucking world. You got to do something to survive.
yeah, it's rough. But yeah, let's transition into chapter 3, the stowaway, at this point.
Stowaway.
Yeah.
Yes.
But she does kind of like climb the ranks pretty successfully, And I think it's interesting how Dementis is largely, if not entirely, absent from this chapter. But it like really built anticipation for his eventual return, and also like we're just following Furiosa as she's trying to lay low and survive in this environment. But we know her revenge is coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting to see the build up to that. And also, I think it adds to the element of time passing because when we see him again, you know, his beard is all gray and he's much older. And so it really does drive home just how long it's been. But
yeah, this was a cool sequence because yeah, she's climbing the ranks, developing some skills, some knowledge. She's super smart. And I really just that whole sequence of them on the big rig, like the war rig, so fucking cool. That's so cool. Like it felt like Fury Road, but it wasn't obviously. But it was like Fury Road, like short version,
yeah,
like succinct.
It was a little
more
mini Fury Road.
Succinct. Yeah, mini Fury Road. Yeah.
Yes.
Abbreviated.
I also love how ornate the war rig is in this one compared to the one in Fury Road. It's like, I guess it's like they put all this effort into this first one and it got really fucked up and destroyed. And they're like, okay, just form over style. Like we're just going for function now.
We don't need aesthetics. We need something that's gonna keep us safe the entire time. But yeah, it's so cool. I really like how the action like moves so quickly, and I like how the scavengers like of the Octo guys,
the Octobus,
the Octobus gang. Like I really liked how they were using some like the propellers and the parachutes. Like it was kind of creative problem solving in a way. Like how do we get an advantage? Oh, you got to get the high ground. Oh, someone did read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, or at least heard the abbreviated version. But I just liked how they were attacking from the sky, and just these the sequences and how she was kind of climbing around on the big rig too. It felt just like Fury Road in that way, and I liked that a lot.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I also love that these guys are the Octobos and his like guys. And they even say when their first attack, it's like, oh, they ride with Dementis. It's like, not anymore. And we know from chapter 2, the reason they don't ride with him anymore, it's because of that Trojan horse sequence. And because, remember, it's the Octobos's guys that he puts in the paint and starts shooting. And he calls, like, Octobos calls him out. And he's like, you're insane. You're an asshole. And so I guess they split after that point. And
yeah, it's neat to see another faction, kind of splintering there, and they felt kind of like the scavengers.
Yes,
I mean everyone in this world is a fucking scavenger, obviously, but scavengers in different ways. I feel like that there's people who live in the Citadel who are kind of civilians / slaves, and then you have the scavengers out on the outskirts who are just waiting like a trapdoor spider, just waiting for something to kind of come into their trap, and then they pounce and get it, which we kind of see at the end too. It's you get this diversity of characters, and I find that just fascinating.
Yeah, and I love too. I didn't make a note of it, but I love just there's an element in this universe of just making the best of the moment you're dealt, because Furiosa at the start of this action beat, right? It's this chapter is called The Stowaway because she's stowing away on the war rig, and she has her motorcycle and her food and all that stuff ready to go, and she's going to go back to the green place. And then they get attacked, and someone, the like fucking repair guy, gets knocked out, and her motorcycle gets crashed away because a car crashes into it. And then I love the exchange. It's like there's the repair guy who sees someone clearly stowing away, and he has that little piece of pipe that he needs to repair something. He knows he's not going to make it, so he's just like, here. And then she, because her plan is fucked, she's like, okay, well, I'm going to go do this repair, and then I'm going to fight off these guys. Like, the entire storyline changes just because the circumstances they're stuck in change. And I think that leads really nicely into in this section we meet Praetorian Jack, who, in my opinion, almost becomes like an oasis for Furiosa, while and also serves as kind of a proto Max and lays the groundwork for part of why Furiosa would be able to place her trust in Max in Fury Road. And like I said, she's thrust into this situation where she needs to work with him to survive. And then she and Jack, like, within the midst of combat, kind of click into sync without any words at all and defend the war rig pretty seamlessly together. And they use the bollywog or whatever it's called, the little spinny
the
thing.
bollywog.
What a great kill.
Yeah, that was so cool. Just like how it sucked in the octopus and just like destroyed him, and then it turned into kind of this long swirling octopus thing. But
Yes.
I thought that was beautiful. And you're right though, that he is kind of this proto Max character, and it does add another layer to Fury Road now, because I think that was one of the things in Fury Road that it's very similar there. Max just is kind of thrust into this situation because he's captured, and he's like he's put on the front of this car, and then they're chasing the war rig, and he's like, well shit, here I am. I guess I'm just gonna have to deal with the situation as it is. And maybe that's just like the theme of this entire fucking franchise. Just do what you can in the moment. There's no other like big arching plan that's gonna save you. You just got to make the best of the situation.
Yeah, and more on Praetorian Jack in the next section, because like the next section is like about them. But I love his line when he's first recruiting her. He says, you have about you a purposeful savagery."
Yeah.
It's just, I love that line so much. And I also love just, he's like, look, listen, if you stick with me for a little while, I'll teach you everything you need to know about road war. And then it fades to black, and chapter 4 starts, and they're like gearing up the war rig, ready to go. People were kind of making fun of it online a little bit. Some people were, where it's like, oh, I love how he says this. And then the next time they're just like experts at doing road war. It's like, no, that's cool, because time has passed, and we're getting the impression that they're a team now. They're a unit, and they work together because they've practiced this shit a million times. It's awesome. I love it.
Yes,
it's so cool.
It's efficient storytelling, and that it tells us everything we need to know. We don't need a whole other sequence of them doing a whole other big rig run. It's like, no, just we know that happened, so it's perfect. Yeah, I love that moment too. It's so badass. Yeah, that's a great chapter.
Yeah, fun Praetorian Jack thing though. He's played by Tim or Tom Burke. Hold on, let me see. But Tim Burke. That Tim Burke is a journalist, so I think it must be Tom Burke. Yeah, it's Tom Burke. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
But yeah, he so Hideo Kojima, the game designer, who you may know as the creator of Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding and a bunch of other stuff, like legendary video game designer, fucking loves movies. When he sees a movie that he doesn't like, he just tweets out like, "Saw Madam Web." And that's the whole tweet. But when he likes a movie, he writes like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. He's seen Furiosa like 5 times, and he's written paragraphs every time. At one point, he said,
Nice.
"George Miller is my god, and the saga he tells is my like medicine," or something like that.
Oh my gosh!
He told Tom Burke that he would make a great Solid Snake in a Metal Gear Solid movie.
Yeah,
now,
I see that.
Yeah, I see it too. But can you imagine, like, the honor you must feel to have Hideo Kojima tell you unprompted that you would make a great Solid Snake?
Yeah, that'll be achievement unlocked of a lifetime. Yeah. You could die happy at that point. That's cool. Good for him.
Yeah. But, chapter 4 of the film is called Homeward, and this one really focuses on the relationship between Furiosa and Jack. They're both Praetorians at this point, which is a high rank in Immortan Joe's organization. And in the next one, Furiosa is Imperator Furiosa, so she gets a promotion at some point. But titles seem to be based on like Roman military ranks.
It seems like that. I mean, they seem to use a lot of Latin with Erectus, Rictus, and Scrotus and everyone. Erectus. So they like Latin and they like the Romans, I guess. So.
Yeah. But yeah, take it away.
Oh no, yeah, I did like this sequence or this chapter. It's kind of like this. It's a good part of the hero's journey where you feel like they're going up and they're about to get out, and then it comes crashing down again. You get to their kind of lowest point once more, and I thought that was they did a really good job with this. My only critique, and I go back and forth on this too,
Mm-hmm.
is I feel like they could have spent a little bit more time fleshing out Jack's character, just because I didn't feel a strong emotional connection to him.
Okay.
I'm more sympathetic to the main character here, so I feel like maybe he could have gotten a little bit more screen time to
Mm-hmm.
really highlight, or maybe just I don't know. I go back and forth on it because I'm like,
Yeah.
we did get a lot of their relationship, and we had this
Mm-hmm.
really nice moment of them connecting
Yeah.
very emotionally. They're looking at the star chart on her arm, and
Mm-hmm.
they kind of touch their heads together. It's like they're not gonna kiss, but they're it's the closest that they're gonna get to
Yeah.
it. It's this
They
moment of
do kiss
vulnerability.
eventually, but
Oh yes, yeah,
at
yeah.
at the last second. But I
Hmm.
get where you're coming from. I
Yes.
do, but I was more on board with the amount we get of him because like I said earlier, he is serving as this sort of oasis for Furiosa when she's
Yes.
surrounded by these hostile and evil people, right? Like it's her one like respite, or he is her one respite sort of. And you can
Hmm.
tell that he genuinely cares about her and that she feels the same way about him, so it really hurts when he's taken away. And it's like I'm glad they didn't go the direction of him betraying her. That's
Yes. Me
it's
too.
that like I had the thought when I was first watching it, especially after she shows him the star chart. I was like, "Oh, like this is going to go one of two ways. Either he's going to die or he's going to betray her to Morton Joe or someone somehow, and she's going to have to cut off her arm to prevent the
Hmm.
like map from falling into the wrong hands. But I'm glad they didn't go that way, and I like her losing him was the final straw that pushes her towards revenge, because if you remember, like before that point, they're just going to run away and go to the green place together. That's kind of
Hmm.
their game plan. They were going to like branch off from that job at the Bullet Farm and go, but now that she's lost him and her directions home because they were on her arm that she has
Yes.
to remove. She just has nothing, so she goes back and seeks revenge. And like I said in the last section, like this is sort of the precursor to the camaraderie she'll eventually develop with Max, right? And
Yeah.
while there's no hint of romance between her and Max, really, like I am sure we are meant to imagine that she's remembering Jack as she's getting to know Max and is becoming allies with him, and that motivates her to trust him more. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely see that. Yeah. I agree with you because I go back and forth on that,
hmm
and I really liked their chemistry. It felt genuine to me. And yeah, it is a neat detail that when she does lose her arm, it is the one with the star map. So yeah, now she just has no way of finding her way back home.
hmm
She's lost the only person that really cared about her or she had any emotional connection to and wasn't trying to eat her or kill her or rape her or anything like that. Like he was
Yep.
actually a good guy for her.
hmm
So yeah, at that point it's like, well, now there's only one thing left: vengeance.
Yeah. Well, and the way she loses her arm too, I
It's
thought was
brutal.
so interesting. It is brutal and it's so abrupt. It's like I was imagining like, oh, she's gonna have to. Someone is gonna find out about the map or something, and she's gonna have to like cut off her arm and burn it to hide the evidence or something like that. But the way it's played out, it's more that it's an accident, that it's crushed, kind of, and then it's just something she has to give up in order to survive. Uh,
Yes.
and we'll talk more about her arm in a second, but I just wanted to get that thought out before I forgot it. We also get the reappearance of Dementis here, and it seems like Furiosa hasn't crossed paths with him since she was a child, which is kind of surprising given her like role in this apparatus at this point. But maybe
Yeah.
she was just never on any runs to Gastown. I don't know, but
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe or they. Yeah. Maybe this was their first run to Gastown. I don't know. But yeah.
or
I don't know.
again, campfire story mythology. This is the story being told, and it's
Exactly.
dramatically fitting if they come into contact again for the first time here.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, I really liked when they visited Gastown, and we
mhm.
got to see it earlier in the movie, and it was obviously a very orderly place.
Mhm.
Like they had their shit together, and then now so many years later, with the Mentis in charge, it's chaotic as hell.
Yeah.
It just it just highlighted how incompetent and selfish Dementis was as a leader. He just had no idea what he was doing. He didn't know how to control people, and he was always like, "I don't know why the people hate me. I do so much for them." And it's like, dude, come on, like put two and two together here. Like you're literally driving the people against you. You're starving them. You're doing all these. You're not a good leader. You're not a good leader. But I thought I liked that detail.
Yeah, well, and the other leaders are fucking complaining about him too. Remember the bullet farmer?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Talking about how he's running Gastown into the ground.
He's just like, we're fucked, dude. Come on.
Yeah, but this is a little small detail too. But I loved when Jack and Furiosa are getting ambushed at the bullet farm. One of the vehicles Dementis' crew is using, it's like this Volkswagen bus with like a second piece that's kind of like one of those long buses.
Right.
And it's a vehicle that they stole from the group in Chapter 2 when they do the draw and quartering with the bike. That's one of the vehicles they're chasing. And
nice.
It's just a fun little detail that it's like once you have a piece of equipment that functions in a world like this, you keep it and you maintain it, and it's just part of your thing forever because another one is hard to come by. It's just a nothing detail, but it's just fun that it's there, and it's one of the vehicles that Jack like crashes through in the war rig, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a good observation because like there was a point where they were building the war rig, and they're talking about like, oh, we've salvaged so many spare parts from so many things across the wasteland, and we finally have enough to put together this gigantic war rig. Like we could finally do this. It's like, yeah, that's right. Like all these supplies are scattered to the wind. It's meticulous with the details here.
And it is beautiful, actually. And I think George Miller said something, and I think they say it in the movie too, but it's like just because everything is falling apart doesn't mean people stop making beautiful things or something like that, which I think is a great sentiment. Like, it is a work of art. It's a death-dealing machine as well, but yeah, whatever.
Right.
Also, that bullet farm sequence is just a really great and intense action sequence. You get Furiosa using the sniper rifle like her mother did before, and you get like a good sense of Dementis' derangement because he's just like laughing. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. And then he's like swoops down and picks the rocket launcher up just before it like falls.
Yeah.
And it's there's so much fun stuff happening in that action scene.
It's very cool. I like that one a lot. I mean, all the action sequences are cool. And if there's one thing I need to nitpick on, it's the arm a little bit here. The realism of losing a fucking arm, unless you're applying a tourniquet really, really tightly, which she didn't. There's no way that she wouldn't have died from blood loss. But again, this is a Mad Max story. There's not there's not a ton of logic, and it's also campfire stories.
Campfire
stories.
Like
this is not his. This doesn't mean this is how it happened. This isn't a historical account. This is a very subjective viewpoint from like Furiosa's perspective. It doesn't mean this is how it happened,
or how people 50 years from now are telling the story of Furiosa.
Yes.
And like because no one would really know how she lost her arm, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
But I love the implication here is that she chews her own arm off to escape, which is metal as fuck.
Yes, that is insane.
Yeah, and but I love that part, and I understand like okay. One thing that's great about these movies, and I'm realizing the more we're talking about it, it's like this movie and all of the Mad Max movies are immune to like annoying YouTuber criticism because all the YouTubers that we hate are so obsessed with like logic and plot above all else, and these movies are just myth. And myth is open to interpretation, and you cannot logically pick it apart because that's not the point. And so every criticism that you can levy at like this movie's plot structure, it's like, hey man, it might not have been that way. You don't know.
Yeah, right. It could have happened any other way. Yeah. It's fun.
But just on the chase with Jack and Furiosa too, because we didn't take notes about it, but it's such a well constructed sequence because like you can feel the hope that they're gonna make it. Like it's like, come on, y'all got it. But also the camera pans out sometimes to like the overhead views. It's like, Oh no, they're too close. You're not going to get away from them. That's not not
Yeah.
going to work. And then Dementis's line where he's like, "Where were they going? So full of hope. There is no hope." Like it's like he's a. We'll talk about it more in chapter 5, but he's like a tragic character too, because you can tell like he had loss as well, and it destroyed him and made him who he is, or
Demented.
did it? You know. But yeah, let's talk about Max's cameo a little bit as well, because he
Very
is in
brief.
this movie. Very
Yeah.
brief.
He's
Yeah,
just standing there
Yeah.
menacingly.
Yes, but he's just it's very reminiscent of the first shot of Fury Road with him.
That's true.
But it's yeah, he's only in it for a second, but he is in this movie, and I did see some people theorizing online, and it's a theory I really really like, because he sees Furiosa after this whole sequence stumbling back towards the Citadel, and he sees her fall, and he kind of perks up a little bit at that. And the theory, because someone drags her the last way to the Citadel, the
Yeah.
theory is that person was Max. He drags her to relative safety and leaves. And I love this theory. Because one, it's consistent with his role in all of these films, right? Just to a smaller extent, right? He enters her life, he helps her out of a jam, and he disappears again. And it's also just a fun idea that these two crossed paths briefly without knowing who they were before they ultimately become like full allies in Fury Road. But I thought
like
it was
that.
great. How did you feel about the cameo? Did you feel like it was distracting at all, or did it fit?
Not at all. I
Yeah.
liked it. Miller did a great job of interweaving these things, these callbacks to the original. Like I think in this chapter 2, he's like, "Here's your boomstick for you," and I think that's a callback to like one of the first movies where they refer to like guns as boomsticks. It's like that's perfect. We don't need any more than that. That's a great callback. And then Max is not distracting at all. He's on screen for 10 seconds, and it's like that's fine. That's fine. I love it. It's great.
All right. But chapter 5, Beyond Vengeance, which is such an awesome name. But
Yeah.
as we alluded to earlier, I love the History Men's line as Furiosa has stolen Rictus's car and is driving off after Dementis, and he's just like, "Who is that?" And then the History Man's like, "I think she's the 5th rider of the apocalypse." Like it's
Right
like
on.
it's really playing into the biblical imagery, right, of the riders of the apocalypse and all that shit.
Yeah.
He calls her an angel of vengeance, right, as well.
I think so. Yeah, those are
Yeah.
some hard lines. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
but
really cool.
I love at this point how the whole deal just kind of descends into this massive faction war across the wasteland between Dementis and the other people in Joe's army, and also it shows the tacticians involved. Like they're all like arguing about what to do, and Immortan Joe's like, no, we're gonna trick him. We're gonna make him think we're falling for his ploy, and then we're not going to do that. We're gonna do something else. But then you also have Dementis being smart, because when he's hiding his whole army, he put gasoline on the roadway where they're going to be traveling, so it's not kicking up dust. So he thinks he's outsmarted them because he's traveling quietly, and he just gets fooled because he's not as clever as Joe.
Yeah, right. One thing that just kind of popped out to me was, this is so hot. This is a desert. I feel like people aren't drinking enough water. That's just one small observation, but it's fine.
Well,
We don't
that's
need to think
why
about it.
Joe has so much power, remember? Because the Citadel
absolutely,
has those
yeah.
big waterfalls. Yeah, but you're right. No one is drinking enough water.
Yeah,
And
it's just like it just making me think of like when we watch Kingdom of Heaven, and they just like take the army out into the sun, and they're
Yeah.
all baking, and they're dehydrated, and then they just get ambushed and slaughtered. It's like that
Uh-huh.
should have happened, but I don't care. That was
Yeah.
just a small thing that just popped in my head right now, and yeah, I really like this final sequence as well. It is cool that it's just like, yeah, it is just this big 40-day war, and I like
Yeah.
the voiceover of the history
Oh,
man
it's
being
so
like,
cool.
there's all these great wars from
There
history.
will always be war.
Yeah, the Nords versus the Vikings, all this stuff, and he's like, but we will always remember the 40-day war. It's like, will we? But yes, we
Yeah.
will, because this is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. But I love and like Miller is so good at this stuff, right? Because the movie does not lose focus, right? This is Furiosa's story. So the war is like a montage for like 30 seconds, and then we're back to Furiosa because this is about her. This is not about Immortan Joe versus Dementis. This is about Furiosa's revenge. And my God, Anya Taylor-Joy sounded so much like Charlize Theron in this.
She
I don't
did.
know. I don't know what she did with her voice, but it was like dead on when you weren't like when she walks up and you see her from behind and she's in her like classic garb from Fury Road and she's like, I need a vehicle.
Yeah.
It sounded like Charlize Theron. And
She did
also
a good job.
I think the guy who gives her a car, I have a feeling that guy is Chum Bucket from the video game, who is like your little companion who fixes up your car in the game.
That's
let me
cool.
see. Chum Bucket.
I had no idea there was a game until you said it earlier this episode.
It's pretty fun so far. It's like there's lots of car combat, and it's like an open world sort of. There are light survival elements, like you have to maintain the gasoline in your car, and you have to fill up water, your little water canteen, and that's how you heal. It's like a Batman Arkham style combat game, but in an open world Mad Max environment.
Cool.
It's
I like that.
it's yeah. I'll keep playing it. It's fun. But yeah, okay, no, it is him in the 40-Day Wasteland War section. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Dope.
That's Chum Bucket. So that's fun. But yeah, let's talk about her revenge on Dementis, the epic quest to kill him, which is another great chase scene, I think.
Yes, it was clever. I knew exactly what was going on because he was like, we got to split up, and this is no time for goodbyes, and they all go off, and he changes outfits with someone. Yeah, I thought that was beautiful, the way they did it, and she's just hunting them down one at a time. They don't get very far, but she gets to them, which is great.
Yep.
And I go back and forth a little bit on the demise of Dementis here at the end. I want to say, as I'm getting into this, that I think what we got works really well for the story, and it's quite poetic. You know, this torturous source of her lifelong misery, Dementis, he becomes a source of hope through this long, prolonged, torturous death, even if it's unrealistic, but it's fun, and it's poetic, and it's beautiful, and it's very satisfying to watch. There's a part of me that feels like it could have been a more impactful death for her character, especially when you watch Fury Road too. If he just dies from that seizure that he has, he just kind of seizes up for a second and he falls backwards. And for a second, I thought, oh, is that how he dies?
I thought that too when I first watched it.
Oh my God, that would have been devastating. You know, it would leave her with this feeling of emptiness. She spent all this time going for this quest of revenge, and she's got nothing left. No one in her life who she really cares about. She can't find her way back home. This is all she has left, and then it's just ripped from her at the end. Like, that would have been devastating to watch, you know?
But maybe that's what really happened. We don't know.
Exactly.
Nobody except Furiosa knows. That's it plays into the whole myth of the story, right? And I personally love the idea that she's tormenting him forever, and he
It's great.
is this source of nutrients for this tree. And we haven't even talked about the seed yet. The
The seed.
the element of hope that she maintains this one like piece of home the entire time so that she can plant it. And I think, doesn't her mom tell her to plant it in the green place when she gets back home? Isn't that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Something
So
like
and that ties back into Fury Road too, because the green place is gone by that time, but she assumes control of the Citadel at the end, which is a green place in and of itself. So it kind of ties into that ending for her character too. It's like she did make it home, but not in the way she necessarily hoped. You know, she built a new home. And but I love the just the torturous element of her revenge against Dementis. It's so perfect, and she just fucks with him. Like, she really revels in it, which I also loved as well.
You gotta savor every second of it. It's so fun. Just like she just teases him. She just like cripples his car, She like takes out all of his bullets like while he's
All his
asleep.
water.
Yeah, she cuts away his water like he's just dying, just being tortured. It's so satisfying. And I'm happy with the ending that we got, and I'm happy that there's these several different rumored demises. Maybe she just shot him in the head. Maybe she just drug him through the sand for miles. Maybe it was something else.
Yeah.
I liked that we got so many different iterations of his death. And it was just beautiful. And it's, again, plays into that campfire story element.
Yeah. And I just love, like, building on that. I love the mythic element of it, right? And that it could have been any of these outcomes. It could have been none of them. But the world will only ever know the truth that the history man says, that Furiosa allegedly told him. Which, is that even true? We don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
But it's such a... It's great. And I also love... and this plays into his realization at who she is, right? I love how that, one, he recognizes her because he's like, oh, you survived when I killed your, like, boyfriend and chased you off. Like, it's like, he calls her, like, you magnificent thing or something like that. Like, he's like, oh my God. And then when she, which I love the little hydraulics on her robot arm that cut the
cool.
chains. And then when she takes the bear, he's like, oh my God, it's you. And
yeah.
and I love that all builds into this it's a cliche, right? Like, you and I are not so different, right? But it's not cliche here for whatever reason. Here it just works really well because she's like, I want my mother back. I want my childhood back. And he's like, I can't do that. Like, you can do whatever you want to me, but you're never getting that back. I know because I lost the same thing. And
exactly.
And, oh, God. And I love, he's like, I love the simplicity of this. It's just two evil bastards in the desert just, like, kicking the shit out of each other. And, and like, I like, it's left open to interpretation on if Dementis lost kids and a wife and all that stuff, too. But, like, I believe it. I believe that he lost all that and he let himself succumb to his worst impulses, and this is who he became. He lost his mind, and I mean, like, that's what Max lost too in the first movie. His wife and baby get run over by a motorcycle at the end. That's
right. Oh, yeah, that is brutal. But yeah, I think you're right because there are these two people who have lost so much, and just the only difference between them is one inflicted the loss on the other so much more than the other one did, obviously. And,
right.
Yeah, it's a powerful ending, and yeah, the reason why I do the seizure appeals to me as his ending is just because I think it would have added another layer to her character, especially in the next movie too. Because it wouldn't be as satisfying as an ending, but I think it's fitting for this wasteland world, and I think her quest for vengeance, it wouldn't have been fully vindicated. She wouldn't have had that satisfaction. And I think going into the next movie, all this loss is compounded in her life, and she's never really gotten what she wanted.
Right.
I think that just kind of makes her a little bit more of a tragic character to a degree, that she just never wins, even though she does everything right time and time again, and we're rooting for her, you know. But again, I'm so happy that he's being devoured by a tree.
I know. It's so it just works for this type of story so well. And I kind of also appreciated that this movie doesn't end with the idea that Furiosa pursuing her revenge is like a moral failing, or it's like a teaching moment for us, the audience. It's like, yes, don't go seeking revenge on people, okay? It's not going to go well for you, but we have plenty of stories like that, right? They're all over the place. They're everywhere. But this movie is like, nah, this guy sucks. Fuck him. Like,
it's a wasteland, bitch.
Yeah, it's like it treats it as a victory that she turns him into nutrients for a tree. Yeah. And, I'm cool with that. I'm okay with that,
I'm all for it, and it's not about the morals, it's about the hope for humanity. It's about the future and where we go from here, and that's why he's being devoured by a tree and why she escapes with the wives at the end. It's because you're focused on that.
Well, and he now provides the nutrients for this tree, and she picks the fruit, and brings it to the wives. It's like, hey, I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to give you a new life and a new world. And his, agony provides the proof that that life exists. And
Yes.
I love how this movie feeds directly into Fury Road, like into the evening before. And then I don't know if you agree, but like I rewatched Fury Road before this, and then watching this, I did love that we basically get like a little here's Fury Road again in the credits, just like
Yeah.
because it's like that is the true ending of this character's arc. So it is nice that it's like if you hadn't seen Fury Road in a while, it's like, oh yeah, I remember this and this and this, and then it ends with them back at the Citadel in that very satisfying moment.
Yes. Yeah.
But it really the best way to watch it is rewatch Fury Road because this is a prequel. Then go watch Furiosa, and then go home and put on Fury Road again. Make a Furiosa sandwich with Fury Road.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Lots of Mad Max.
But any final thoughts on Furiosa?
I don't have any other notes. This
Yeah.
is such a fun movie, and yeah, it is hard to top what Fury Road was.
Yeah.
And I think this movie comes close to that. But again, they're very different stories in their own ways, and so it's hard to compare, apples to oranges. Even if the orange looks a lot like the apple.
Yeah, I agree. Like Fury Road, I think is one of the best films of the 21st century. It's incredible, and I wish I had this thread pulled up. But Brendan Hodges, who writes about film, said I think very aptly that this is like a wonderful B-side to Fury Road's A-side, like less tight and neat, but maybe more emotionally vulnerable, and they're companion pieces. They go together.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, incredible. Like this is what the big screen was made for. This is
Definitely. I agree.
incredible filmmaking on display, and I hope more people get the opportunity to go see it. And I really hope we get Mad Max: The Wasteland. I'd love to see what Miller had in mind, because apparently that is also a prequel to Fury Road, but about Max. And Tom Hardy would be coming back, and like I would like to see George Miller get to finish this vision that he has in his mind. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That would be neat. But yeah, that's Furiosa. Let's move on to our final segment of the episode, where we're talking about other stuff, things that we're watching, reading, enjoying, consuming. Dylan, what have you been up to?
All right. Well, continuing with a couple things, like as I mentioned before, the Mad Max series. So since our last episode, I watched Beyond Thunderdome and Fury Road. I would say I like all of these. Beyond Thunderdome is probably my least favorite of the bunch. It's just weird a little bit, which I like in a lot of ways, but it doesn't click together quite as well, even though it has a lot of stuff that I really like in it. Fury Road obviously is Fury Road, as I just said, one of the best films of the 21st century so far. I'm also continuing on with the Cryptonomicon, and this week I've watched some of Smiling Friends. It's an Adult Swim show that's on Max, and it's fucking hilarious. The Red Letter Media guys are in it some. Mike is in the first episode.
Hell yes.
Basically, the premise of the show is like there's this company, they're the Smiling Friends, and their job is to go like make people smile and have a good time. And their first client is this guy who they're like he's like been really out of sorts, he could really use a friend. And they walk in, and it's this like middle-aged guy, and he's holding a gun to his head, and it's Mike Staclaza who voices him.
And
he's just like, hello.
This is Plinkett voice.
Yeah, it's not quite his Plinkett voice, but it's pretty similar. And he's basically like, they're like, oh no, oh hi, and they're like, okay, okay, please, just like, well, if we make you smile today, like, just put the gun down. It's like, oh, okay, but if I don't, I'm gonna fucking kill myself.
Oh God, that's dark.
It's really dark. It's not all that dark, but
I'll have to watch that. That sounds like fun.
It wouldn't have, it's almost too dark, but because it's Mike doing the voice, like, it's just instantly funnier.
Yeah.
And the most recent episode of this show that came out last night, I think, apparently has Mike, Jay, and Rich in it. So that's fun.
Hey, go guys. Go Red Letter.
Yeah, but I also watched Beneath the Planet of the Apes this week, the second of the original Planet of the Apes movies. Not as good. it's 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 okay, but it makes a lot of really weird narrative choices. Like, there's just another astronaut who lands on the planet who's kind of like a discount George Taylor, and it's like, what? Why do we have just another middle-aged white guy running around chasing after the first one and trying to figure out what's going on? But there's like a society of advanced telepathic humans who live underground who want to go to war with the apes, and they worship a nuclear bomb. It's a very strange film.
That is odd. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, well, the next one has time travel, so I'm excited for that.
Ooh, yay!
Yeah, I think the main ape characters from the first two movies are somehow going to get like time traveled back. And then, if I understand the plot right, their child is also named Caesar, not the same Caesar, but this Caesar like leads the revolution of apes against humanity or something. So I'm going to keep watching them. Like, I'm curious to see where this goes. I've never watched these movies, but also continuing with Assassin's Creed Syndicate, having fun with that, and like I said earlier, the Mad Max video game. Also, Star Wars: The Acolyte started last week.
Oh yeah, I need to watch that.
I watched the first 2 episodes of that. I'll say, like, visually, a lot of the problems we're used to with Disney Plus Star Wars, right? You know, it's kind of flat. It doesn't look amazing, but the narrative is interesting so far. I forget his name off the top of my head, but the main guy from Squid Game is in it as a Jedi Master.
Oh, cool.
And he learned English to be in this show.
How neat.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's cool. But like, I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit predictable, but it's a fun look into the High Republic era of Star Wars, which, like, I've been trying to get into, but the books, as I've talked about on the show many times, are like the same book over and over again. And it's nice to be in this era, but with like, oh, this is telling a story rather than just setting up the next thing. This is great. So that's been fun. I also watched Richard Linklater's Hitman on Netflix with Glenn Powell, and it's so fun. I really liked it. I think you'd like it a lot too. If you watch it and like it, maybe that can be our next episode if we don't have anything else to talk about. But
maybe.
It's a great, like, rom-com, basically. Have you seen the trailer for it? Do you know what it's about?
No, I've not heard of this movie at all. I thought you were talking about like the old school hitman, bald guy with the number on the back of his head kind of deal.
No. So basically what this is it's loosely based off of a real guy who was like just a psychology teacher, and as a side gig he would work for the police. And he would basically impersonate a hitman and go in and meet these people who wanted to hire a hitman. And he would tailor the hitman to like the client. And that's
cool.
Yeah. And then, but the plot of the movie is basically like he does this for this woman. And then she ends up falling in love with the hitman that he is portraying, and he falls in love with her. And then things ensue from there.
That is clever. I like that premise.
It's a really good movie. But what about you? What have you been watching?
Between all the travel, not a ton of new stuff, honestly. But I'm proud to say that I got to the last episode of Schitt's Creek. Yeah. Finally, I did miss a few because we were watching them together, my partner and I. So I'm definitely gonna go back and rewatch some of them. But it is such a sweet show, such a fantastic little sitcom. It's funny, and that final episode does get you to choke up a little bit because it's just so heartfelt, and everyone has their own fun, good, happy ending, and it's very fitting, and I would recommend that show as a good little sitcom. Yeah. And I'm almost done with The Sopranos, believe it or not.
End of an era.
I mean, when I finish it, I'll probably just go, okay, back to season 1, rewatch it. But it's so good. I got 5 episodes left. I'm coming in hot on the ending here, but I'm gonna try and take my time with it. It is oh, it breaks my heart every episode. It breaks my heart, but it's so powerful, and it's yeah. Even though it's only 25 years old, there's still like some episodes that just feel way too real in some regards. Like there's one character, without giving away too much spoiler, who's like he's a gay mobster, and the mob just is incredibly homophobic. Like they're like, we gotta kill this guy, 'cause even though he's a made man, even though he's our best earner and everything, we gotta kill him.
Oh, you were telling me about this. Yeah.
It's so depressing, but it's so beautiful. It's like I want him to succeed, but it's the fucking Sopranos. I know he's not going to, but it's such
and
a
in Pride Month, no.
I know. I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't mean to. But speaking of Pride Month, we actually started watching RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars season 9, and it's a fun season. So
nice.
I don't know if I've told you about it before, Dylan, but All Stars is it's a different part of the franchise where they bring back queens from the regular season who were
it's like the Hunger Games too.
Yes, yeah, kind of, yeah, exactly. They're like, you're the best of the best, or like you had something great, but you didn't win. You didn't make it you didn't make it all the way to the end. We want you to come back and compete again. So the All-Star season, they're a lot tighter, but exceptional quality from everybody. It's so fun. Like they're all great queens. And this season is interesting too because all the queens are playing for charity. So they win money each week, depending on how they do. And there's like a big $200,000 prize at the end for the winner, but it's all going to like charities of their choice, which I think is a really great change. 'Cause it used to just be the winner gets all the money, or you just keep that money for yourself. But these queens, it's like, they've been around for so long. It's like, we already have enough money. Let's give some back. And I think that's great. Cool. And a lot of the charities are honestly like LGBTQ focused kind of charities and initiatives, and I think that's just very powerful. So it's a fun season so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Cool. Love that. Let's see, where are we now? So that's our show. We did it. We did another one. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. Not sure exactly what we're doing yet. Like Hitman's an option. Maybe that Bike Riders movie with Austin Butler and Tom Hardy could be fun. But
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, in the near future, we're gonna have a lot of TV episodes because The Boys comes back on Friday. House of the Dragon comes back on Sunday. We got The Acolyte going. And there was another show that we like that is coming back. But Arcane Season 2 got a teaser. It's gonna come back later this year, apparently.
Cool. Man, there's so much good shit's coming back. I need to catch up.
Oh, and Deadpool 3 will be later this summer, too, obviously.
That would be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah. And if we have time, maybe we'll do a rewind on the first X-Men. I don't know how scheduling for that will work out, but that would be a fun thing to have out for Deadpool 3. If we can make it work, we'll update y'all probably next episode on if that's going to happen. But, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Until then, Niles, where can people find you online?
On Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, what about you? Where can people follow you online?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, on Twitch eventually at D-Day_movies, and you can find both of us here at Play Pause Rewind on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and whatever other podcast platform you use, and also on our second channel, Play Pause Rewind Videos. That's where our rewinds live, spoiler-free versions of these episodes, and other things we decide to make eventually. We have some other types of content cooking around in our brains a little bit that will be there eventually. And we also have a TikTok, Play Pause Rewind _podcast, I believe. All of that's linked in the description. Just follow the links. Don't listen to me. But thank you all so much for watching or listening. If you liked this, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. That's how we grow this show. And we love doing it. But stay safe out there. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.